I sit before this mirror, feeling heady and very content. It started with a stillness and a shedding of awareness of outside this temple, except the moment in which I heard metallic sounds as if it was communication just beyond my understanding it. What I saw began as if I wore a purple crown that was snug and covering like a winter hat. And then it became apparent that this was not me who wore the crown. I saw in my place a purple, violet being. First, I saw that it had 7 fingers on each hand. Then I saw that it had 4 toes on each foot. And then I saw that it had a tail that was as a trident, a squarish trident. And the phosphines were thick and pressing down all around me. And around this being that I saw, this one-eyed being that took up a large portion from one side of the top of its face to the other side of the top of its face. There was a dark blue all about in the mirror, but outside the mirror it was blotchy and there was plenty of spaces in between. And I felt a euphoric shuddering coming down me, loosening me up, leaving me feeling good, content. 23 books and 5 websites are mentioned as sources along the way to come to some of the conclusions in this book. But the responsibility is accepted in those who contributed to this book for their own choices. They use Latin versions of the verses, which is traditional to this art. I personally would use the Aramea, Biblical Hebrew, Aramaic, whatever you want to call it. I would use the versions in those languages. Now, there are some differences in the traditions of which verses to use, but the reasonings pretty much line up. They use their sense of a Phoenician magical alphabet, and they use what they call rectified versions of some of these things. On the brass vessel, it says something like Solomon, the name, Raphael, Michael, Gabriel, Ariel. I have said elsewhere some of the linguistic issues with Exodus 14, verses 19 to 21, and the OTA, CHS, they use more Agrippist forms, but they've tried to streamline a version of the Shem HaForosh in terms of, that it's understandable, the system of the, what sigil the entity has, regardless of where it is in the order. But they do, look at the Sloan and other such manuscripts. The metals in which to have the sigils in, well, that would vary. There are various things that you can do with your vessel brass. I have a box that I contain little cards for summary instructions of attributes and chants and stuff like this for the goetic entities, and I've put that on my series, which my series may be why I'm not accepted into this group, or maybe just my letter was not received, who knows. But just because I have my own opinions doesn't mean I can't, involve myself in some group function. Because, let's be real about it. Who has the exact opinions between, everyone, right? It can help very much to categorize these. I have used colors to categorize things, colored markers and stuff. You certainly don't need gold and silver and all that to be a good magician. Over time, you might want to get a little engraver and work on your engraving practices, and you can set up a nice little set of sigil art or whatever in one way or another. Some people might use paint, or for the paper stuff, or parchment as people like to do, but in the paper stuff, I still like to employ colors. Some people prefer Thomas Rudd's names and stuff for the Goetia, and I myself prefer to figure out their origins in older languages than Latin, but I do leave some Latin notes and some German notes and stuff like this from time to time when it comes to looking into some of the entities mentioned in the grimoires. Some modern magicians try to pretend like it's overly psychological, like the entities aren't real and stuff, so therefore they treat things more like they are the god, and so it's less an act of piety, the offerings and efforts that they go to. It's about experiencing certain things, and it's about maybe forming a relationship, but not in the sense that you would expect with what is more openly and clearly treated as a deity. Now, the offerings offered are certainly important, and there's certain things that are favored more than one or another, and I'm not reading this on film, so if you want their full opinions or the quotes that they have brought up, you can certainly this is one of 2 books on the subject that I would recommend. If you only have 2 books in this book, there's supposed to be a super deluxe edition, maybe that's the better one at some point, but this and the Goetia demonium, is that what it's called? I've done a more thorough paper on that and operations associated with that. But, they would tell you not to use blood, especially not your own blood. And there are certain reasons for that, but I think one of the things is that you take it to the point where you're giving your all to your operations, you're connecting it all to whatever that's not quite as dangerous as one might think. What they're saying, it's a particular danger if blood is given. Now, there's certain disease scares and stuff like this that would be, sort of the thing. In some of the books, they tell you the transfer of blood and sexual fluids is part of the rites, and they talk about how to make certain symbols. And the word defiled, well, I mean, in the Christian sense, they were supposed to avoid sex if they were married and only take part in it, and only even get married if you thought you might sin otherwise. So, rather than most religions where you had sacred sexuality, even prophets, like Muhammad, received revelation when he was with his wives, and not just, in their presence, but, engaging in that behavior. But they didn't wipe the results onto things. But you can dedicate your abstentions and your indulgences to your spiritual practice, right? Ritual baths, ritual clothing is certainly important. And you can make just the cheapest sort of thing, writing on cardboard boxes and stuff like this, if, that's what you have to operate with. Ritual baths. So the ring, like, you can look at what is here. Achidrach, Achdutu Rash, Yachdutu Tamar Hasav Achid is that one. You have Tazbout, and you have Yahweh. And there's more variation for that other one, but me, all, that could be a sh. And instead of the Y, you could have, the V or W there. So you're left with 4 variations with that. And the traditional using the particular hours or portions of the day or night, the particular other circumstances like, in the woods or in quiet or, that sort of thing, are certainly important to consider. We have also some attributes like that in setting the preparation stuff. And one thing, there's nothing wrong with a black room, but, it could be a bit more overheated when that's the case. This temple here, it gets hot enough in here to melt the wax if you leave candles. As you may have seen from my fall equinox rite, I left the candlestick in here and it kind of warped, and I had to use that to straighten out some other candles. It also worked because I put that on a exposed wall. A wall that got direct sun. And that cabinet, If we say that pride is why they were bound, well, then it's obvious we're dealing with demons, right?